Imagine if you were able to watch your great-grandparents tell stories from their lives. What made them laugh? What moved them? How they responded to adversity and triumph? And what impacted their existence? That would be a treasure. Now you can offer that gift to your loved ones. Hello, I'm Dennis Tardon. For more than 45 years, I've been a professional interviewer documenting the lives and times of hundreds of people. I will guide you or your family member through the important stories of your lives using my unique interviewing skills. I'm now offering my legacy interviews worldwide via Zoom from the comfort of you or your loved one's own home. All you need is a webcam, and I will do the rest. Contact me today to schedule your legacy interview.
Oh, hello. How many states have you been in today, EmEm? How many states of the US have you been in?
In the last 3 days or just today?
Let's go with the 3 days because even today is pretty stunning. But what about the last
Let's
3
see,
days?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And boy, are my arms tired. No, that's
My
like,
arms are really tired.
how are you feeling? And you even told me you're like, yeah, you're not that tired. You'll rest tomorrow. And I'm like, because you just got in too. That's another thing.
Yeah, I did. I did. So Tuesday night, I got my plane landed around midnight.
Hmm.
And then I had to drive the hour and a half home. And then Wednesday
Jeez.
and Thursday, both yesterday and today, I had to go into Boston for the day. So
Right. Exactly.
that's a 2.5 hour drive there and a 2.5 hour drive back.
That is really intense for anyone. And like I was saying before we went on air, like if I go to the post office, I'm just so put
I know.
out, and I'm like, that's my day. That's my whole day is shot if I got to do something like that. What do you think about traveling post COVID and the airports and like what is your experience?
So the airport, I have to use my wheelchair, so I get rushed around and through. I don't go in all the same lines and everything. I get through quicker because I have to go through all my medical supplies.
Right.
I take a lot with me, so they have to
Hmm.
go through it all. Like I have to go in the room and they search all my stuff and take out
Hmm.
all my equipment and everything. But so that's not bad. And the plane itself, my doctor's like, the plane itself really is probably the safest place for you to be because the air is constantly filtered.
Hmm. Right.
But
Exactly.
I wore my mask quite a bit when we were down there. We all did. There was a lot of um, places like when you're waiting in line to get into a place or something, you're just like squished, especially the Halloween nights and stuff. You're like
Right.
really, really squished down in
Hmm.
Orlando. As far as traveling here, like to go, so I was at medical appointments yesterday and today in Boston, and I just go through the side entrances where I'm not traveling around all the people right during
Right. Yeah.
that sort of thing. I'm not going throughout the hospital. Today I had to go throughout for some tests, but other than that, I just kind of avoid large crowds.
Yeah, have you noticed that, like, so people really aren't masking that much.
No.
I still mask. I don't care. I There were times I masked even before the because I have autoimmune stuff, and
Yeah.
I feel like we should normalize it. If you feel the need to mask, you should mask, and I don't let it deter me that I
I
see a
did
whole
sure that I
sea of people not.
got
Yeah.
my COVID shot and my flu shot within a length of time before I left, and then I just don't I spent a lot being locked in my home during
Yeah.
COVID, like
Mhm.
lockdown for me and
Yeah.
people, I guess, couldn't that have um
Pre-existing conditions that,
pre-existing really
yeah.
like our immune systems are null and void,
Mhm.
like there's not a lot going on there. So it's I don't want to do that forever. Like we don't know when this is gonna. So I was finally was like, I'm gonna when I have the chance to go, I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna be as safe as I can and do what I can do because
Yeah.
I don't want to be stuck. I mean, now we're in 3 years later
I
and
know,
still,
I know.
so
I know. The thing that got me out of my house was my friend Olive Chiachia, who is an actress, and I remember because she has an autoimmune condition as well, and she started going off and doing all of the things that you're doing, and I was still reticent. And she said to me, "Well, if you just lock yourself up forever, then that's dying of COVID." And
that's right.
I was like, "Oh, so I could be
Yeah,
right. I could be a casualty of COVID by not getting COVID if I'm just locking myself." So I don't want to advise anyone who doesn't feel safe to go out, but I'm just saying for me, I'm
that's
starting to do that. Yeah.
how I feel about sorry, that's how I feel about not living, like just not doing anything or just shutting yourself down in general, even with just being sick. Like
Right.
I can be in pain and miserable and lie in my bed all day, or I can be pain and miserable and go bungee jumping.
Right, exactly. Exactly. You can either,
Like
uh,
I
th-
just
I agree with
want to
that.
go. I
That's
just want to go. I don't want to waste any time.
Yeah, and everybody, and there's no one size fits all. That's the thing too. Is like for me,
Yeah.
there are people that prefer that way, and like I don't judge them. But for me, you and I really are simpatico. We like to get our minds off of the stuff that's holding us back, and we don't like to be held back. So anything that we can tackle or override, we really try to do that. So
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to balance everything.
it
But
is.
here's the thing. When you have a chronic illness, a serious chronic illness, you know that even if you live a full life, you're not
Hmm.
going to have full quality of life
Yeah,
throughout.
it's a quality
So when
thing.
you're feeling able to do something, you have to do it, even if it means pushing yourself. I mean, that's
Hmm.
me. This is my philosophy. I don't expect anybody else to live this
Hmm.
way. I know I'm a stubborn.
I had a dear friend that back long before COVID, I was dealing with a seizure issue for about 6.5 years. And I would be afraid to go out because I didn't want to have a seizure in public. There was a lot of stigma, particularly you go back 15, 20 years. And I had this wonderful friend and he would go with me everywhere. And every time I would want to like leave early, he would go, push, push. And what he meant was push the envelope. He would always go like, so he'd do this little like thing and I'd look at him and I'd be
Yeah,
like, all right, just push yourself where you're comfortable, but like always keep that tension of the comfort zone being a little bit in your rear view. Don't do anything crazy, but that's so I always think about that, like push,
well,
push.
I have,
I'm
to
getting there.
me, the reason that I am more, I don't know, outgoing or pushing myself from what other people are like, oh my gosh, you need to rest. You should be resting. You're doing too much. Well,
Hmm.
is because I lost my sister, and my sister was practically agoraphobic. She barely left her
Yeah.
room, never mind the house. She had
Right.
a serious illness, and so for me, it's like, and that was decades of, well, maybe when I'm feeling better, That's all you heard, like when I'm feeling better, I'm going to do this. When I'm feeling, but she never felt better and she ended up passing away.
And yes, and I did have agoraphobia for a while as an offshoot of the seizure issue, which is related to my autoimmune. Because, yeah, like you get into this habit and it becomes a real thing. Paula Deen also famously struggled with agoraphobia. It is a real thing and it can be very debilitating. So I love how you mentioned that you want to make sure you're going in the opposite direction. You want to compensate
I
for
always
that.
like to make sure I say why. I don't want people, I don't like anybody to feel less than if they're not
Yeah.
keeping up with somebody else, because there's people I can't keep up with. I know
Yeah.
people can't keep up, like, so we all
Yep.
have our reasons that shape us and create these environments we choose to live in. So
Yeah, and is it so hard to just accept people when they say what their limits are and what they're, you know what I mean? Like, why can't we all just be like, oh, wow, that works for you and it, whatever. I think that's the road forward, right?
this is a good time to bring on our guest.
This is a great time. I want to do a quick shout out because David just gave a happy birthday. It's the birthday's eve for Lily May, who's in the
Oh,
audience.
Lily
Thank you
makes
for being here. Sweet
birthday
16.
Eve.
Sweet 16. So that's very, very exciting.
I
So happy
almost
birthday.
forgot. Hold on. I have this cup.
We have to show that. Where'd you get that from, MM?
I got this at the Cosmos Outpost. The link is pinned
Oh,
in the featured
okay.
section of the Cosmos Facebook group.
Go to the
Get your
Facebook
merchandise
group.
now. There's sweatshirts, tank tops, t-shirts, mugs,
That's right.
jackets, fanny pack. I don't know. I don't know what's in there right now.
I don't know what's in there, but I hope there's a
If
fanny
it's not
pack.
in there, let us know.
If it's
We'll get one
anything
for you.
Chris Stool has, maybe we could try to get because we love Chris Stool merch. That's so great. Okay, so
We'll try
yeah,
to do it.
so we are here to follow Allen Coffey's journey, which is incredible. We've had him on Outside the Lines with Manny Zamora. He's friends with Manny. He's been on there, and we were talking more topics about religion and spirituality and all that. And I said, hey, Allen, like EmEm has this show with me called Journeys, and we follow people's entire journeys. I had all these questions for him, so we're going to get them all answered about his bio, about like who is Allen Coffey. Like I want to know more about him, and so tonight we're going to get to the bottom of it, guys. We're going to get to the bottom of it. Oh, and JD said, do you ship to Australia from the merch? I just want to put that in before we put
Oh,
out.
I have
That's a
not
good question.
checked, but I will.
Look,
I can
answer
swim it
is
over
loading.
later. I'll swim it over later. Just let me know what you want.
Every time that she comes over to Tasmania, she'll bring you in a new item of merch. Okay, so this is AT Allen Coffey. Hello, Allen. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me on. I'm
Well,
glad to be here.
it is our distinct honor to have you here. We're gonna get under the surface of Allen. This is so great. One of the things I had a question I was going to start with, but I don't think I want to lead with that right now. You were talking a little bit before we went on air, and I thought that was even more interesting to start with. The house you're living in and the place that you're living in goes way back in your family. Can you describe maybe a little about that for an intro?
Yeah, the house is not all that old. It was built in 1968, but the land that it's built on belonged to my paternal grandmother, and it was part of a much larger section of land that has been in my family since about 1880. My great paternal grandfather moved here and built a house that I actually used to live in back from here. And he farmed and ran cattle and all sorts of good things like that around here for years and years and years. And then, he passed it down. And the last one of his children to actually own it was my great uncle, Dodd Crawford, who died in 1960 something. And then his wife lived there until she died, and then her nephew, my cousin, inherited the original house and most of the property around here. I live on a 3-acre plot that's the last little bit that stayed in my part of the family. And my parents built this house in 1968. We moved into it on July 4th 1968. And the next morning we got up and we had water in the kitchen, and turned out the plumbing leak. And so this guy comes out the next day, and he's back there in the wall trying to sweat the pipe, and he set the house on fire. And so then we had to call the fire department. And
oh my Lord.
Finally, though, we got it put out with the hose back, you know, we were able to put it out. But you know, this house had kind of a wild beginning. And unfortunately, the poor guy, he didn't speak any English, so he was having a hard time communicating to us what was going on. And I remember me and my mom, we went down to the gate, the private road that goes into our property here, and waited for the fire truck to show up. But by the time they'd gotten there, my dad and the plumber's helper had gotten it put out.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. So I was interested in that because I didn't realize that you were from South Texas like that far back. For some reason, I thought maybe you had Northern or Yankee roots.
Well, now my mother was from Ohio.
Okay.
She was from Zanesville, Ohio, that area. Actually, Duncan Falls and Philo, which are I went there when I was like 6 years old. I've never been able to go back. I kind of wanted to go back up there and look around, but that's been a long time ago. But yeah, she was from Ohio. She met my father when he was in the Army Air Force in well, she met him before that during World War II, when they were both my dad was still working in the oil field. He hadn't been drafted or anything, but my mother was traveling around with her sister while her sister's husband was in pilot training for the United States Army Air Force. And they ended up down in the valley, the Rio Grande Valley area. I think they were in McAllen. And that's where she first met my father. He was asleep. He was sitting on a couch in the hotel lobby like this, with his hat pulled down over his eyes, as Texans will do. He was asleep, and my mother,
I've done that a few times myself,
wearing this little teeny ice dress. I don't know if y'all know what an ice dress is or not.
I don't. What is it?
It's you see skaters wear them and stuff.
Okay.
Ice skaters wear them. The little fluffy fringe and all that. I don't know if they even make those anymore or not. But if you watch any old movies from the 1930s and 40s and have any ice skating going on, the ladies will be wearing those. And my dad
it's almost like a bodysuit with a skirt, Renee.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Bodysuit with a skirt. I can visualize that.
Really short, cute.
Okay, awesome. Okay, and
considered perfectly acceptable wear back then.
Yeah.
Is this where, because you were raised Catholic, correct?
I started off Catholic when I was a little kid.
Where did that come from? Your mother? That came from your mother?
Both my parents were Catholic. My father had converted to Catholicism when he was going to the Catholic high school here. The Coffeys and the Crawfords were both Presbyterians, but they both went to the Presbyterian church. But my dad, he was going to the Catholic school, and he liked what the Catholics had to say, so he became a Catholic. My mother was raised Catholic in Ohio, and when they met up, they got married by the base priest at what's now Scott Air Force Base, Illinois. And they told me that the priest wouldn't marry him until the hand on the clock was going up. Because if it was going down, then that was going to be bad luck.
Oh, okay, like a superstition? I've never heard that before.
I never heard that one.
I had never heard that either from anybody else. But yeah, they said this Catholic priest, they were supposed to get married at 6 p.m.
Now, everybody that's ever gotten divorced, you know why?
You know why? It's all in the clock. It's all
the ceremony was supposed to start at 6 p.m., but they couldn't get to the chapel because they had the access roads closed off because they were running a bunch of B-29s through on the runway, and those roads all crossed. And so they had to wait till all the B-29s got down the run, got off of the the pre-runway pavement before they could get down to the chapel. And so I always thought that was a funny story.
That is funny. Okay, so that's part of, so that gives us a bit of a base here. And now here's the thing. I'm so familiar with stories that are in the reverse of your spiritual journey and philosophical journey.
Yeah.
But the
people
I know so many, but you do it in the opposite direction. So this is such an interesting thing because it's almost like I can rewind or like reverse engineer certain things. You know what I'm saying, right? I've met so many people that do it. Or I know a lot of people who I'm
not quite following. Are you saying you're talking about people who started, like, say, as an atheist and become?
Yes, and they have this big
become an atheist.
Yes, like most people I know who are atheists, like they kind of were always like that. Most of my friends who are, and actually I would say 80% of my friends are agnostic or atheist or secularists. You know, they've been like that. It's not like they went in a different. You were an actual minister, a practicing Baptist, a minister for a number of years with a congregation. This is a fascinating story because you're one of the leaders. You are someone at the forefront of that. And then you end up here. So that's what I'm saying when I say in reverse, because usually you find someone who maybe didn't have that strong spiritual journey or whatever, and then they end up becoming the minister and the person who's at the pulpit. So walk us through, like, how, so we have this Catholic upbringing, but then it changes. And then at some point you become very zealous about religion or spirituality to the point where you become at the forefront of one of these movements, right?
Yeah. Well, I was basically raised Catholic from birth until about 8 or 9 years old. And then my parents were upset with the Catholic Church because they didn't like the Vatican II reforms. They didn't think the Mass should be in English, it should be in Latin. And so my mother told me, she said when she was a girl, she had been told that if you ate meat on Friday, you would die and go to hell, and some other things. So that kind of turned them off to the Catholic Church. At some point, they were having some problems. I don't know the exact nature of them because I was like 6, 7, 8 years old during this time period. And we started going to a Lutheran church. And then one of my dad's good friends, a guy that he had grown up with, got saved, had become a Baptist, and he was like super on fire. And he started dragging my dad around to all these Baptist churches and stuff. And then my dad got saved. Then my little brother got saved. Oh, thank you for being jealous of my beard. I've worked a long time on this.
I don't know who wrote that. That's Facebook
David.
user.
It's David.
It's David. Okay.
David Myers,
David.
not my David.
Okay. There's 2 Davids here. Yes. And right. And I just want to do quickly. So Lily May, whose birthday is tomorrow, she said as part of the LGBTQ plus community, that's actually the more common order. So that's interesting. And I wonder if some of maybe that's even generational, but so she's saying that the order that you're in.
I think the reason that we see it, we feel like we see it more the other way is because when that happens, it's like this big celebration within any religious family or community or what have you. It's like,
that's another good point. Yeah.
A whole big celebration. And that's, awesome if that's what they want, but I don't,
but that might have not been what Allen.
Nobody threw a party when he said, I'm done, I'm atheist.
Right. That's an interesting dynamic. Yeah. So let's get there. I love that. Okay. So at some point, so you talk about being this idea of being saved, which in the Protestant churches means what? That means
that means you have repented from your sins, turned away from your sins, and turned your life over, or surrendered your life, is how I used to always put it. You surrendered the control of your life to Jesus Christ, and that you're willing to have a perfect, you're willing to let him take control of your life and direct you, and you're going to read the Bible, and you're going to go to church, and all these kinds of things as a result of having Jesus Christ in control of your life.
But
And
there's no one moment, like, the Orthodox and the Catholic have sacraments, so you would be going through those sacraments. In this scenario, it's just sort of something you say, is it something that what is that moment when you're like
well,
saved as
usually,
opposed to not saved?
usually it's a very cathartic experience, and it's
Okay.
usually during a church service. Not always, but usually it's during a church service. The preacher's been preaching, or maybe it's during what we call a revival service, where you have a guest minister there who's preaching sermons that are designed to make you feel what we used to say convicted of your sins. Just another way of saying really, really guilty about your sins,
Okay.
and seeing that Jesus Christ and surrendering your life to him is the only way to be forgiven of all those bad things that you've done. And usually people are having, a lot of folks are having very strong emotions. They're crying, they're begging for forgiveness. I know there were a number of occasions when I had people come down to the front during the altar call, which is when the sermon's over, the guy comes down, he gives the invitation, which is, if you need to come and give your life to Jesus, come down here to the front and I'll talk to you. Or if you have some other need, like to rededicate your life, or that kind of thing. And so the people would come down to the front. Usually the preacher would talk to them. I'd have a prayer with them, or the preacher would have a prayer with them. And then there were usually some pre-designated people sitting on the front pew that would take over from there. But usually they would pray what we call the sinner's prayer. And I didn't really like the kind of pre-packaged can, sort of almost salesman sort of setup that always seemed to have. So, but I would lead people in a prayer, something like this. I'd say, Lord Jesus Christ, I acknowledge, or I agree with you that I'm a sinner and that I'm lost and that I'm going to go to hell. I don't want to go to hell. I want to be saved. I want to follow you. I want you to take control of my life. Please come into my life right now and take control. In Jesus' name, amen. Something like that. Not that exact prayer, but, and then after that, we would usually baptize them. So those two things are the you might say the oh, what's the word I'm looking for? That's what happens when you turn 62. You don't remember all the words anymore. That's a cathartic point where your new life in Christ begins. And so after that, usually we would schedule a time for them to be baptized. We didn't usually baptize people the very same day that happened, just for logistical reasons, because in a Baptist church, we do what's called full immersion. And what that means is you go in a big tank full of water, and the preacher puts you under. Now, we're not like the Mennonites who do that 3 times. They do what they call trine face forward immersion, where they dunk you once for the Father, once for the Son, once for the Holy Spirit. But we'd say something like, I'd ask the person the question. I'd say, do you believe in Jesus Christ and trust him as your Lord and Savior? And they would say, yes, I do. And I say, upon your profession of faith, I baptize you, my brother or sister, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then I'd put them under and I'd bring them back up. And that was the extent of the sacramental things that go on in a Baptist church. So we don't even call them sacraments. We call them ordinances.
Right. Okay. Ordinances, like laws. They're more of rules, or okay.
Yeah. Christ laid down 2 ordinances. There's baptism, and then there's the Lord's Supper, which I'll refer to as the Eucharist or communion.
And priesthood. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we don't have anything. We have those 2 ordinances, and that's it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So then when you're going through this era.
Can I just ask, can you just give a brief definition of atheism for anybody that might not fully understand?
Right. Good idea. Yes. Thank you.
Atheism. I do not think, believe, or am convinced that there are any gods that exist anywhere.
Which is different than agnostic, which means an agnostic is not really sure. They're questioning.
They don't know one way or the other.
But for you, you're as convinced that there is no God as you used to be convinced that there was a Baptist sort of.
That there was, that there was the Orthodox Christian God. But
right. Okay.
I am convinced from evidence and from just observing the nature of the world around me compared to the nature of the world that the Bible describes or any other spiritual literature, that there are no supernatural or supermundane beings in existence in the world or in the universe.
And back during this,
and everything ultimately has a natural explanation, even if I don't know it at that purpose. Something happens and I can't tell you why it happened. Even if I can't tell you why it happened, there's still somewhere a natural causation that at some point in time science will eventually figure out. Just like we figured out where lightning came from, and we figured out where the rain came from, and we figured out what oxygen is, and what the atmosphere is made out of, and those sorts of things.
Yes, thank you for highlighting what John just wrote, because
right, exactly, yeah, denominations,
constructs. Jesus had nothing to do with them.
How do you guys feel like religion versus spirituality? Because to me, religion is a construct. It's they tell you the answers, and that you have to follow this path, whatever the religion is. You have to follow this path in order to get to be worthy enough of the authority figure over you, right? Whatever your choice of God is and whatever your choice of religion is. Whereas for me, spirituality it also separates everybody. Like John was saying, with all the different denominations and all the different religions, separates. Whereas for me, spirituality is more going within yourself to find those answers and realizing more connections with our earth, our universe, other lives, other people is the answers, where we're going to find the answers, and learning and growing. I don't feel like I have to go be in a church to have spirituality. I'm not, I guess for me, religion and spirituality, what I'm trying to say, are two totally different things. So I'm just curious.
Well,
well, because can he be? Yeah, that's a great thing. Because I'm sorry to cut in, but Alan, can you be spiritual? Yeah, can you be spiritual? Are you spiritual? Do you believe in like the soul? Do you have spiritual practices?
Okay, so I'm remembering a quote, but I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember. Maybe somebody can look it up real quick. I think it was Ludwig Wittgenstein, and he said something to the effect of, there are things that are inexpressible and they're mystical or magical. There's a quote on it anyways. And that stuck with me from my philosophy of mathematics class all these years later. That quote, I can't remember the exact wording, but I do remember those bits and pieces, because when I come to a fork in the road and I would need to pray or meditate or whatever wording other people want to use is fine. For me, I use the word praying or meditating. I think to myself sometimes, maybe there's not an answer. Maybe I'm not supposed to have this answer right now. I haven't gotten far enough into my life or my learning to know that answer. So that quote comes to mind, being that it's inexpressible. So I'm just curious how you guys are with spirituality compared to
it depends on who you talk to, because I know some I'm part of a group called the Clergy Project, which is made up entirely of ministers who used to believe in God, but don't anymore.
Exactly what Lily just said.
Yeah, just what Lily said here. Can I just read this, Alan? Because it might be related. So she said, I'm odd. And I don't think you are, Lily. I think this is because she said she's a mix of atheist and spirituality. I don't believe in any higher beings, but I believe in channeling energy. And she says she doesn't know if she's explaining it correctly, but I think that sort of dovetails with what you were talking about, too, right? So, Alan, does that resonate? Or
well, for me, I do believe there's a God, and I do pray to God, but I don't sign and I don't feel like I have a set of rules. Like the Bible is
Right.
not
You
my
don't have a
rule.
doctrine. You don't have a doctrine that
Mhm.
you abide by that
It's for me
guides
to
you.
interpret and learn
Right.
and grow from and explore and research further, not just to take as the rule book manual for my life, right? That's how I feel.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Mhm.
From an atheist perspective,
Also, I was
those
raised by an atheist, just so
Oh,
oh,
I
okay.
didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know. We got to do your journey, your spiritual journey one time,
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
want
I
to
ought to
find out how
do
you
that.
got there. Yeah, cool. Okay.
But what I was going to say is that from from an atheist perspective, the kind of experiences that you're talking about, we would not say that uh, those are unreal experiences, because obviously if you're experiencing something real is going on. But we believe, if you want to use that word, we think based on brain science and a lot of other things, that those things are all products of your own mind, your own brain, that they don't connect necessarily. Well, they don't connect with anything outside of yourself, as far as we can tell, scientifically speaking. But that does not denigrate the reality or the helpfulness of those kinds of experiences. It just means that they are things that are generated from within your own brain. That's how we look at it.
Okay, I see that, and we've had a few people mentioning that to them they have a relationship. That's the relationship, a personal relationship with Christ or a personal relationship with their higher power, which I think could be like maybe a third spoke on this wheel, which you would be familiar with, Alan, in
Oh
the
yeah,
Baptist community, right? That's like your main bread and butter, right? Is like
yeah,
personal
yeah. That
relationship.
was I was supposed to build up the community, and I was supposed to, get people saved and help my church members learn how to get people saved and all that kind of stuff. Somebody who has written about the question that M asked, that you asked M, was a guy named Sam Harris. He practices atheist spirituality. He's one of those originals. You heard of the new atheist? You've heard that quote before? Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens,
Oh, Christopher
Daniel
Hitchens, I've
Dennett,
heard of, yeah.
and Dawkins, Richard Dawkins.
Dawkins is the big, yeah.
Those are the four new atheists. Sam Harris had written about has written some about spirituality, because he practices meditation and various things like that. But his perspective is what I just stated about how it's more about things that are going on inside your head that doesn't, like I said, it doesn't make the experience unreal or unreal and unvaluable. It just means that something is being generated from within you.
Yeah, my
Okay,
dad,
right.
that's how my dad would explain it. My dad was very he was brilliant, first of all, smart, and he would say he believed in the history, that the Bible was based on some form of history, but that then it went off course and here we are today. But he
Yeah,
did believe that, these certain figures in the Bible existed and all that. And he also, even though he didn't believe, and he thought, like you were just saying, that it's our own self, we need to look at ourselves. We're the ones that are creating these things that we think are miracles happening or answers coming from above. That was how he, just almost exactly how you just explained
yeah.
it.
That's exactly how I would. Uh, that's how I would express it. Um, Mr. Duncan here says earlier says, I hope I didn't offend you, and no, you didn't. I'm not offended at all. But yeah,
I'm
so
wondering I'm wondering if there's a common ground here where Jesus is talking about, according to your faith, let it be done to you. And if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, go and plant itself in the sea, and it will. Jesus did talk a lot about the power of faith. And then Lily's talking about channeling energy. And then there's people who believe in what is that thing called? Attraction. There's all these things where people believe in certain vibrations, or that like positive mindset can create differences. Um, is there some kind of, is that sort of what you're talking about, that nature can be is explaining this? And then I'm talking about also Christians saying, well, Jesus was using the natural environment, and if you believe in God, you believe that God is the original, he's the creator, so he's the original scientist, right? So science would be everything that he had created anyway. So does there have to be this necessary, like, I understand that atheists are going to be atheists, and people who are Muslim or Jewish or, Buddhist, they have their own way. But at the end of the day, it's like, was it St. Augustine who said something like, pray as though everything depended on God, but then work as though everything depended on you? Is there a way to have like a both and here, in a way where there's some common ground, there's some overlap between our intention, our faith causing real, like when they hook up people's brains to these electrodes and they find that when you're praying, your blood pressure drops, you're in a meditative state. Monks have set themselves on fire for protest, self-immolation, and they're in a state where they literally change their medical realities for a while. They can withstand higher doses of pain when they're meditating. Just react to kind of what I'm saying here, because I'm laying out some of the. I'm sort of bringing everyone. I'm trying to bring I'm trying to bring everyone's comment together here, and then.
I think it comes down to, for me, I mean, I was raised in a Christian church. My dad was an atheist, so. My mom still sings in the church choir, so talk about opposites, right?
Yeah,
that's a really interesting.
Yeah,
that's an interesting dynamic.
But he never ever didn't let us have those experiences. It was always what we had to learn on our own. Like he always. Well, you've seen me quote him a million times, Renee. It was always
your dad,
a lesson.
Yeah,
There was
he's iconic.
Always a lesson, and Dad always made us walk through that fire to figure out the lesson. He never just bailed us out or gave us his opinion, So I guess my reality in that sense is different. So for me, I personally have a relationship and how I pray, and my brothers and sisters that come and pray with me. And so there's that. But I do not and would never condemn somebody else's religion or not experience their religion. Or, my dad and mom had a vast, lucky for us, because I lived in Maine, where there was only one person of color my entire school years. There was no different religions, no different races, nothing. So luckily my parents had a very diverse friend group. So I was experienced to Muslim religion long before that was well known as it is now, or talked about in any negative way. And Jewish, my mom's best friend, they were Jewish. So my parents gave us a lot of experiences. We were never put in a bubble or a framework, like in a box. We were never put in a box. We were always exposed to many things and always allowed to form our own opinions. And Lord knows I have opinions now, people.
Well, this brings me, and Brittany's had some Brittany, I'm not ignoring your comments. I wanted to put them into a new sort of path here. So, Allen, when you were active, very active as a leader in your Baptist community, I'm assuming that you and your colleagues were having what you believed were authentic experiences. You were not trying to con anybody. You weren't there under any pretense. You were authentic and genuine. So what did you feel? What did you believe in? And where did that conviction come from? Where was that relationship with God?
A lot of my relationship with God was fear-based. I didn't want to go to hell. That's how I got saved. I didn't want to go to hell. And a lot of the rest of my, as I look back on it now from the perspective of where I am, I really did believe. I believed in all the things it talked about in the scriptures and stuff. But a lot of my motivation was fear, because I didn't want to disappoint God. People talking about actually loving God. Well, I loved God, but I was more scared of God than I was in love with God, for a lot of reasons. And when I would, when folks would talk about God, we'd talk about God, and we generally would focus on how much we loved Him and we praise His name, and how we appreciated Him doing all these different things, either for us or in the world around us, and that kind of thing. But there were times I had some, I wouldn't call them, I don't think they qualify as ecstatic experiences, because we don't. Back when I was a minister, and the kind of churches I served, we didn't do speaking in tongues and raising our hands. In fact, that was really looked down upon by members of the congregation. And I got in trouble for not running off a few people who did that in church. But I had experiences where I felt really, really like super connected to to God and the higher ups. But I didn't. And I even had experiences where I think that I thought at the time I was moving on to a higher level of experience with God. But my branch of the old traditional Baptist, we were Southern Baptist, so I mean we were connected to a very fairly diverse group. But the churches that I pastored and I was associated with, we didn't dance in the aisle or that was all kind of, if you said amen, that was okay, but didn't really like a lot of big shows of emotion, if that makes sense. Am I making any sense?
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
what you're saying. It was more like, when you're a kid and they'd say no more talking, no more fun.
Yeah.
Quaker meeting has begun. That little saying poem we used to
Yeah.
say when we were kids.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I
And
get silence. Because I started in a Methodist church, and that was very much like that. Like there was no, it was just like silence. And,
Like stoic, yeah, very.
yeah,
not like the frozen chosen would be
Mhm.
one
I
of
went
the
to
jokes
Baptist church, but like Southern Baptist, and that I never looked back.
yeah, we my church, we were the frozen chosen. Of course, the church, the last church I pastored was founded in 1902, and the other
Wow.
one I pastored was founded in 1899. I never pastored a church that was founded in before the early part of the 20th century or the late 19th century. But the first church I pastored, I was there for 4.5 years, and then the last church I pastored, I was there for 18 years and 10 months.
Wow. Okay. But so what I'm getting at though is while you were there, you said you were there mainly your relationship with God was more of like a fear-based thing, but
Mhm.
I'm going to bet that you ran into and worked alongside some really good salt of the earth,
Oh yeah,
honest people, like amazing, right? Like really
yeah,
good people who really believed, and they were, just good, decent people who would help each other in need and stuff.
yeah,
So,
yeah. There
so
were
you were
definitely
seeing a
people
lot
there.
of that.
Yeah,
Right.
there were definitely people like that there, and I tried to model that in my own behavior. I would tell people, they'd say, if I gave something to say someone who was a homeless person or something, they say, you don't know what they're going to do with that. They're going to buy drugs with it or whatever. And I'd say, look,
I've heard
I
that.
did
Yeah.
the right thing. I gave them the money. It's
Yeah.
their money now.
Yeah.
It's
Then
not mine.
yeah.
It's their money now. And what they do with it is their business. You do the right thing
Yeah.
no matter what somebody else does. And I try to live by that maxim. You do the right thing no matter what the other person does.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
And,
I totally. Yes.
and it's interesting when you're the pastor and you're trying to help people move to a higher level of Christianity, a higher level of being loving, kind, faith, hope, love, all that good stuff, and see folks that they're just real happy where they're at, no
Right.
matter what level that is. And I don't know how it is in other people's churches, other than from what I used to hear some of the pastors tell me about their church in our Baptist association. But in the churches I pastored, people, I'd say like over half the congregation, they were pretty happy where they were. They didn't really want to hear the preacher get up there and point out areas of their life that they needed to change. They wanted me to tell them how bad all those people outside the church were.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So was that part of what got you disenfranchised? Was it the personal relationship with Christ that you struggled with, or was it that you saw things you didn't really appreciate the behavior of some of the people that you were around, or was it an intellectual sort of thing, or kind of everything?
Actually, it was intellectual, and it was also a series of realizations I had. The first one was in 2006. I had, to be a Baptist preacher, you almost had to be a Republican. I mean, I guess there was a few Baptist Democrats out there, but you had to be a Republican. And in 2006, the Republicans had a series of ongoing sex scandals where we had, predators who were running after, like, a guy in the House named Mark Foley, who was basically hitting on congressional pages. And we had a guy in the Senate, Larry Craig, who was, soliciting for, sex in bathroom stalls and stuff like this. And find out later, the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, had been a huge child predator when he was a wrestling coach. And it occurred to me in that particular point, the Republicans had always been put forth to me as the party of family values. That's what they were all about. They were the party
right.
of family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me that they weren't living that out. And so because I had always been kind of concerned with some of the cruel things that they wanted to do to people, like take away their welfare and all this. Because as it was pointed out to me a number of times when I was still a minister and before I became an atheist and was undercover, still being a minister, you care too much about poor people. I think they're getting just exactly what they deserve. If they were following Jesus, they'd be like me, kind of attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized
reminds me of a parable. I can't remember the whole thing, but something about, when the pastor gets to heaven and has to face his judgment, and God said, if only you had looked past your steeple. Like he never, same thing. And anybody not within his church didn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
Or anybody who was not a believer in Jesus Christ, they really didn't matter. If they're poor, too bad. They should have been better. Like they should have been a good person like me. So anyhow, I looked at all that and I realized that the only thing they were interested in was giving away the farm to all their billionaire donors. So I had to reject the Republican Party, and that's when I became a Democrat. And then, no, that's really not a fair comment, John. And so then the next thing that happened was I read a book by Frank Schaeffer. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. His father was a guy named Francis Schaeffer, who was a big wheel in evangelical circles when I was a young man. And it was called Crazy for God. And he talked about just how deplorable most of these big gun ministers that we're all supposed to be looking up to, people like Jerry Falwell, John MacArthur, guys like that we're all supposed to look up to, how just they were basically just a bunch of thugs, is how he put it. Now I'm not sure I'd go quite that far, but I got to really kind of looking at their behavior more than what they would say from the pulpit, and I got concerned about that. So I finally said, well, I don't think I can go down that path anymore. And so I had doubts about those two things. And then I had doubts about my own ability to interpret reality. Do y'all know who Michael Shermer is? You ever heard of him?
No.
He edits a magazine, or owns a magazine called Skeptic.
Oh, I've heard of Skeptic. Yeah. Okay. I know who you're talking about now. Yes. I've seen interviews with him.
Yeah. He goes around to different places and gives lectures. He came to our little college here in Victoria College, and gave a lecture on why people believe weird things and why do smart people believe weird things. And one of the things he does, there's a video he shows. It's called the gorilla video. He tells He tells all the men to watch one set of people pass a basketball around, and he tells all the women to watch another group of people. There's right there on the screen, pass the basketball around. Okay, so you're concentrating on passing the basketball around, so you're watching them, and you're watching them very, very closely. Then when the video's over, he says, "How many of y'all saw the gorilla?" And I'm like, "The gorilla?" And he backs it up, and sure enough, a guy in a gorilla suit walks out in the middle of the little game that's going on, stands there, he waves at everybody, turns around and walks off. I did not see the gorilla. I was so concentrating so much on the basketball stuff that even though that would have been well within my visual range, and nobody, but I think 2 people in the whole auditorium actually saw the gorilla. And so as I'm looking at this, I realized that, I had always trusted my ability to see and interpret things, and to know that I was seeing here, and I could determine the source of it and all this kind of stuff. And it made me realize that maybe some of those religious experiences I had been having weren't really what I thought they were. Was there some sleight of hand going on? Was there some sort of some sort of distraction thrown in? Because that's what this was. He had us to. It's just like illusionary magic. When you see the illusionist do his thing, key to that is you have to distract the person from what you're really doing. And that's what happened with this gorilla. And I got to thinking, maybe some of these things that are going on are things that were distracting me from what was really going on, what reality was like. And so I also, I started doing a bunch of research and things like this. I haven't gone off the edge yet. Started doing a bunch of research, and I learned about how the effects of music can lure people into a trance state, and that religious music is calculated to do that, get people kind of in sort of a very suggestible light trance sort of state where they're open to suggestion. And I started doing some more reading about how that can be used to make you believe and do all sorts of things. And so then the final thing, though, that drove the nail into the coffin, because I'm thinking all these things like, well, have I been being duped all these years to believe stuff that's not real? The final nail in the coffin was, I ran across this website, and I can't remember the exact name of it, but the gist of it was, why doesn't God heal amputees? He supposedly is healing all these people in the hospital with cancer, or not all, but these few select people, healing them with cancer, made grandma's ingrown toenail get well, help person with this condition, this condition, this condition. If God really does heal people, why doesn't he grow people's severed limbs back? Like your leg gets blown off in Iraq, the best you can hope for is a prosthesis. Now, we have really great prostheses nowadays. Artificial limbs, they're really good, and they get better all the time. But that's not growing your leg back. Why can't a faith healer or someone who is gifted with the gift of healing come in and lay hands on that person's leg and make it grow back? There's not one single instance in recorded history of somebody's limb growing back. And I thought, okay, that's a deal breaker right there, because the Bible tells us, if James, let the one who is sick go to the elders, and they lay hands on him, pour oil on him, pray for him. The one who is sick, he'll get well. What about amputees? No, apparently not. It's just too bad for you, buddy. You got your arm cut off. That's outside God's desire to work for you.
Well, my question would be, so Brittany's asking if you ever witnessed miracles that, that you believed were real. We're not talking about faith. I think most people in our crowd don't consider televangelists as convincing. And there's been Dateline, there's a lot of con men who use religion of all different religions to just,
I think
there's,
most of the people in our community are, regardless of what their personal relationship is with their religion or spirituality, they're all really open and share with each other. Really.
yeah, they're really open, but we tend to, I think our culture now generally, and I enjoy. I lived in South Georgia for a number of years, so I definitely knew a lot of Protestants who would look at these televangelists and be very convinced, or they would go to a community where, people were being paid, but they didn't know, and they were being paid to say that they were running around and stuff. That's,
Yeah,
back in the book, I think in the book of Acts, they had a guy like the magician, there's always some weird stuff going on there. But outside of that, did you ever see something where there wasn't, not on television, or there wasn't like a big revival, but, you experienced, someone close to you experienced something that was interesting?
I have never personally witnessed something that I thought was miraculous in the sense of biblical miraculous. I've seen people who are extremely ill get well, but that was because they were in the hospital. So there is the people getting in the hospital. The people in the hospital, they're being treated for their illnesses and such. So I don't think we can count that. But the fact that I've never witnessed anything that I thought was, that I could say was an actual biblical miracle. I know people say things like, oh, well, every time a baby's born, that's a miracle. Well, no, not really. That's a natural process that occurs, for reasons we understand. That's miraculous.
Right.
And other kinds of things. But no, I've not ever witnessed anything that I would say was a biblical miracle or any kind of supernatural. The supernatural was the only explanation for it.
So I think I know we're running out of time. I just want to ask one more question, because I know what my dad's answer was. So I'm just curious what Allen's will be. Is what do you think? What do you envision after death? Is there anything after death?
No, I'm pretty sure that when you die, you're dead. That there's no spiritual activity, that your mind and personality, when your brain ceases to function, or if you have Alzheimer's or something like that, well before then, ceases to function, you're just gone. You don't exist anymore. And I don't like that answer. I don't like that answer. I
can't imagine anybody would.
Yeah, I wish that there was a way for my personality to live on, because I like being alive. My life is not all that great in terms of financial condition for one reason or another, but basically being out of work since I got fired from the church. But
what experience do you have? Oh, 30 years of something I don't believe in anymore. Doesn't go well on the resume.
Yeah, I was a Baptist minister for 32 years. I know how to. I'm not afraid to get in front of people and talk. I can sit down and analyze documents and tell you what they mean. I can organize volunteers. Yeah, there's not a lot there in that portfolio to get a decent job. And then, of course, this all happened. I'm 62 now. This happened when I was 56. So I'm already on the far end of being hireable, and I didn't have any cool computer skills or anything like that. So I basically was unemployed from November 22nd, 2016 through January 1st, 2023, when I got, actually January 9th, when I got my first Social Security check. I had to just go ahead and retire because I just could not find a job.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, so
we're gonna have to have him come back so we can keep going.
We gotta have him come back.
30 minutes and we went over.
I know. I was telling him before we went live, like, and it's just impossible. And look at, I
I
think
knew it would
we
be.
have like the most engagement. I can't keep, if I miss someone's comments, I know that I did. I could not keep up. There was so many comments. Brittany,
It's really good.
Brittany, we'll have him back and we'll highlight some more of your stuff. I just want to say this because I want to answer Brittany for myself. I haven't shared much, but I have witnessed miracles, right? But the thing is, Alan, it's very interesting because you have to say, is there a medical explanation outside of? That's what you're trying to get at, Alan. You're saying, well, there could be. So for me, I've seen so many things. And then, of course, no, I don't know that there's not a natural thing. But for me, God and nature is like the same thing. So I don't, you know what I mean? Like to me, everything is a miracle and nothing is a miracle. Yeah, it's all connected. But yes, I've seen things that would be like growing back a limb, Alan, and we can talk more on part 2 about that. Literally, that would be like the same thing where things are growing back or whatever. And there's so many people in this whole world who have reported, like, what people like, raising from the dead. And there's all these, like, Brittany's probably going to want to weigh in here because I know she's chomping at the bit, where there are people. I mean, there's all of Africa. I have so many, I own 2 businesses in Africa. I'm always around Africans, and their way of life is they'll tell you about wild things, fetish things, voodoo things, Christian things, Islamic things, Jewish things. They have a whole mysticism that is a part of their lives. So if they were watching and engaging, they would be like, yeah, like 17 times today, I saw something totally outside of the natural order. And so I want to get into that some more because I want to, oh yes, Vengeance, real quick. Somebody wants to ask a question real quick from our Twitch channel. Thank you for tuning in on Twitch. Vengeance, if you do it real quick for Alan, you can ask a question. But so I want to say that, and I wonder, but my guess is going to be, Alan, that even if you did see somebody's arm grow back, my guess is that you had other reasons for wanting to disengage from these practices. That's just going to be my guess, but only you know.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm just waiting for that person to type there. There's a little delay because
I believe that there's something more. I believe that the energy, it has to go somewhere. It doesn't just dissipate. But and I pray and I meditate and I love to read my Bible. I have my grandmother's Bible. It's comforting. I enjoy it, and I you know me, I love to research and learn. So do I question it all the time, every day, every single time I read it,
I had, and I want Alan's, we'll keep you for just a couple more minutes, Alan. And again, to the audience, I promise you, I am not avoiding, like, if there's questions, it's just that there's so many. So, and you guys can see that we're on 3 different platforms right now. This is a highly charged topic. And we actually scheduled this like maybe 6 weeks ago. We did not schedule it to coincide with some of the things that are going on globally. So
we just lucked out.
Yeah, it just happened this way. I promise you, we did not put this together. But I wanted to say, I did see an interesting thing. There was a Vietnamese young nun who was born as an atheist to atheist parents, and she became a nun after some experience. And the guy asked her, and I saw this recently, and he said, "Do you doubt?" And she said, "Oh yeah, like all the time. I doubt all the time. It's a great thing." And he said, "Why would that be a great thing?" And she said, "Because to me, that's my free will, that I'm here by free will. It's not slavery. It's not forced upon me. My doubt reminds me that I can leave whenever I want. I don't have to." And I thought, I don't know if that was just a cultural sort of nuance that I was missing. But to me, I thought there's something here. I thought that was kind of an interesting, where she was leveraging doubt for an extreme way of a spiritual path, a spiritual life. So I don't know. There's a lot of stuff out here. Yeah, Brittany said she has so much to say.
There's a lot to say.
Maybe you can even come on at some point. Okay, so there's only so much time. So Vengeance from Twitch said, what do you give Alan's beard from 1 to 10? Can we all vote? It's a 10 out of 10.
Sure, go ahead.
It's a 10 out of 10. Thank you,
Vengeance.
Okay. Yes. And yes, absolutely.
It's a good note to end on.
And Lily, yeah, this is so great. Would you say this show is a miracle? Yes. And somebody also said, in Judaism, you're allowed to doubt. I did not know that.
Yeah, in Christianity, it's not encouraged as far as like amongst
No, Christianity strips
conservatives.
you down. Like if they say they're stripping you down of your ego, they strip you down. Like you have to be, like you said, totally submissive. It, and again, it's different for every person's experience is different.
It is, and there's already a
What
panel.
church,
Brittany
denomination,
wants
area, all that. But
Brittany could be on our panel. John Duncan already said he wants to come on in a panel. So
you're gonna come
Alan, you've started
on.
a whole Alan, you've
We just
started a
want to
whole
do
panel.
VIP. We'll just all hop on.
Yeah, we'll just all have fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of do that sometimes, apparently.
Well, you definitely charged up our
I like it
audience.
because we can have a conversation. All three of us have different beliefs. We can
Right.
have a conversation and it's respectful. And we're learning from each other. We're listening
Right.
and we're learning. We're not just
Yeah.
assuming we are all
Hey,
knowing and moving
William
forward.
Myers says I just started a cult.
Yeah, I think
Somebody else says
the beard gave you away. The beard gave you away. And Lily Mae said, yeah, she's talking to Alana, had to filter so much today. There's so much going on. And I do encourage people who are sensitive to certain things with religion or with, war. I've had to do that too. And I've noticed that the algorithms have really been letting us down. They cramp down so hard on us for music copyright and all kinds of stuff. And then I've been seeing things as I'm scrolling that I wish I could not have seen. So these are the conversations we need to have. And I'm so glad that we have so many people with different backgrounds who are contributing and we're learning, like Em said. To me, this is like modeling a way forward that we want to continue to have in this world because, we're a diverse world and I like that it's diverse. I like that not everybody is like, a carbon copy of myself. So we can encourage each other. Yeah, exactly. So there can be unity and not uniformity. Unity does not mean uniformity. You can also have, it was an African priest who taught me that, but anyway.
My theory on isn't, if I think somebody doesn't agree with me or I think that what they believe might be harmful or what have you, it's not my job to teach them or change them. That's my perspective only. I'm not expecting everybody, but what I have been taught to do is to be what we want to see, right? So I'm just going to live my life the best I can, doing my thing over here that works for me. I am here to lift anybody else up, but I am not going to judge you or tell you what you're doing is wrong or just you just emulate what you want to see in the world. Like I want goodness in the world. I want everybody to be happy. I don't want to be judged, so I'm not judging you. I don't want to have somebody harp on my beliefs and my spirituality. I am not going to rain on somebody else's. There's going to be times when those things collide and you can't have a certain relationship or depending on what it is, but for the most part I think that it's really awesome that so many of us in this community are able to do that, to just be together as a community and connected through all our differences. Like we're learning from each other, we're listening to each other, we're helping each other with praying, meditating, whatever, sharing energies, however you want to word it. It's really been really a wonderful experience and not a lot of it in the world right now.
That's what we need.
So
Fantastic.
no matter what's
those are great closing thought there. I love that.
No matter what's going on with negative, and we all, it happens. Social media is a jungle, but overall, I think we've been really blessed.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan, what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are: I think this has been a very, very good conversation to have, and I'm perfectly willing to come back and talk some more about it because I'm not here to try and convince y'all you need to be an atheist, but I'm here to help y'all understand where I'm coming from as an atheist, because we're not generally evangelical in our in our behavior. But
it's like three of you, like Dawkins, and there's like three of you that are, but generally not really. It's kind of like a Russian Orthodox. The Russian Orthodox, they don't want to evangelize. A lot of times they don't even want somebody there. It's totally
it's like my dad. Nobody, I bet you very few people knew he was an atheist. It's not like he walked around with it on his shirt.
Yeah, I don't.
He didn't go to church. You know what I mean? Like people just assumed he didn't go to church. Which, hello, Gen
A lot of
X,
people don't go to church.
75% of the dads didn't go to church. It was the moms.
Well, yeah.
and the kids.
Yeah, the last church I pastored, our official membership was like 200 and something. And of those people, about 40 showed up on any given Sunday,
Yeah,
maybe more on Easter and Christmas.
that's right.
Oh, yeah. Not going to church is not
I
going to
really
out.
enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, everyone did. And that's the thing. I know people want to jump on and stuff, but we're going to have Allen back. We'll probably do it like a panel. If Allen, if you're okay with that, it seems like
Oh,
there's so
sure.
many people that want to be on screen with you. And I've learned a lot about the people in our audience. So hopefully everybody has felt honored and respected. And like Em said, we're all sort of learning from one another. And let's schedule this pretty soon, guys.
Sure.
Let's do it again.
I'll get on it.
Yeah, EmEm's getting. You're not tired at all. She's been in 7 different states. She's flying around everywhere, and she's like,
She's gonna go in the VIP room this evening and chitty chat.
Okay, so VIP after this, right? And thank you again, Allen, so much. There's so much more to your story and also to your belief system and philosophy that we really want to delve into. But we're gonna end it for here, and then we will
get into the good stuff when we could actually.
I know we were just getting the good stuff. We were just getting the good stuff. All right, thank you guys. Have a good evening, everybody, and we will be scheduling another. Bye.